कथितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं तं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्रतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तन्न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Om Gurubhyo Namaha. We continue with Chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the Yoga of Action and Renunciation of Action. Here is the essence of verse number 11, the translation and commentary by Maharishi ji. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalairindrayairapi yogina karma kuruvanti sangam tyaktyaatma suddhaye. Here is the meaning. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action for self-purification. Let me repeat this. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action for self-purification. Now, in the last verse, we have seen how all actions can be given over naturally to the Divine Being, and how all attachments can naturally be abandoned, and one can naturally rise from doing anything wrong and be untouched by sin. We also understood that this state is gained in cosmic consciousness, in which the self is completely separate from activity. And so, in this state, all actions are motivated by the power of nature, and all actions produce life-supporting effects, and no wrong is possible. Now, coming back to verse number 11 again, when Bhagavan says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action for self-purification. Now here there are very important keywords here, and we will try to go over them one by one. The first is by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses. Second is alone. Third is yogis abandoning attachment. And finally, perform action for self-purification. Here, Bhagavan is making clear the necessity of action for self-purification. So here, a few important questions arise. Through the practice of samadhi, does not a yogi already have a pure state of consciousness? Is not the practice of samadhi sufficient to purify the soul? And next, towards what state of self-purification does a yogi aim when he performs action? So here, it seems that the practice of samadhi is not enough to bring the complete self-purification. Bhagavan is expressing the need for performance of action for the degree of self-purification which is not gained by samadhi alone. So again, yogis abandoning attachment perform action for self-purification. Let us look into this in more detailed way. A yogi is one who is united with the divine. For this yogi, the union with the divine can come in transcendental consciousness, cosmic consciousness, or God consciousness. Try to understand this carefully. When this yogi gains the union with the divine in transcendental consciousness and attains the cosmic consciousness, then he has realized the self as separate from the field of activity. And by virtue of this realization that the self is separate from activity, he is able to entertain activity. So here, he is able to perform activity while yet remaining in the eternal freedom of the self. In this realization, he sees that the self is not involved and all of the activity naturally remains on the level of the body, mind, intellect and senses. This is what Bhagavan means when he says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect and even by the senses alone, yogis abandoning attachment perform action. Now let us look into this further. Here the word alone in this context is highly significant. Again, let me read the phrase here. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect and even by the senses alone, yogis abandoning attachment perform action for self-purification. So here the word alone establishes without doubt and with all possible emphasis the separateness of the self from the field of activity. Moreover, it is in this state of realization that the body, mind, intellect and the senses are capable of acting quite independently. So again, this word alone now establishes without doubt and with possible emphasis that the yogis perform action abandoning attachment. Let us look into this further. During the practice of transcendental meditation, the mind gains the transcendental consciousness. The metabolism of the body is reduced to a minimum, and the entire nervous system gains a state of restful alertness. So this nervous system gaining the state of restful alertness and metabolism being minimum is the physical condition corresponding to the state of being. So in this state, the mental and physical levels of the individual life come to the level of the cosmic life of the omnipresent being. The individual mind is held by cosmic intelligence, and the individual physical existence sustained by cosmic existence. So now this individual mind and the individual physical existence become the instrument of this cosmic being and begin to respond to the cosmic need. So here, this situation, what you are seeing in transcendental consciousness, is not made permanent yet. But with repeated experience of the transcendental consciousness, then the cosmic consciousness is established and this situation is made permanent. So, in this cosmic consciousness, the body, mind, intellect and senses remain the instrument of the divine will. And here they remain as the instrument of this divine will, irrespective of their mode of activity. So again, the main motivating force of their activity is the divine will, the almighty cosmic intelligence, which is responsible for the creation and evolution of the entire cosmos. So here we clearly see that the activity is not driven by personal desires. When we look at the nature, we see that the whole of nature responds to the need of cosmic purpose. So in the same way, when the man's body, mind, intellect and senses are brought to the level of cosmic intelligence, then naturally he responds to the need of cosmic life. And so, finally, this is what Bhagavan means when he says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action. Now, let's look at the significance of the expression abandoning attachment. Here you have this yogi who has risen to the level of divine being, and for him abandoning attachment automatically becomes a living reality of his daily life. There is no need for him to cultivate non-attachment at any time. So again, this yogi, coming under the direct influence of the divine intelligence, his whole field of activity leaves the realm of the individual self and then gains the freedom from the binding influence of action. So again, it is important to understand here, this abandoning attachment has come automatically as a living reality into the yogi's life. Now let us look at the self-purification that Bhagavan is mentioning here. We have seen that Bhagavan is saying that action is necessary for self-purification, for these yogis. Let me read the verse again. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action for self-purification. Here, a yogi gains self-purification in 3 stages. So the process of purification of the self begins first when the waking state of consciousness experiences the transcendental consciousness. The second stage happens when one is going from transcendental consciousness to cosmic consciousness. The third stage of purification happens when cosmic consciousness has gained God consciousness. Now let us try to understand this further. We know pure consciousness is the pure state of the self, and it is of transcendental nature. The mind arrives at it by transcending even the subtlest experience of the relative field. Next, when this state of pure consciousness is alternated with activity, the mind gains pure consciousness permanently. Here, the pure consciousness is then naturally maintained in spite of engagement in activity. And in this state, the duality of life becomes a living reality. Again, in this state, the two aspects of life, self and non-self, absolute and relative, become separated, and the self is lived as pure being, and it is unallied with anything. So again, this experience of the complete separateness of the self and the activity is the culmination of the process of self-purification. But as we have seen earlier, this process continues finally to give rise to that state of unity in God consciousness. And here it does not accept activity even as separate from the self. Here, the separateness responsible for giving rise to a sense of duality in the state of cosmic consciousness is transformed into the light of God. Here, the duality of the self and the activity merge into the homogeneity of divine existence in God consciousness. So this divine existence in the oneness of God consciousness then brings further culmination of the process of self-purification. Now, let me summarize these. We have seen that in all 3 stages it is necessary to perform action for self-purification. So performance of action on the subtle levels of life enables one to transcend the field of activity and gains transcendental consciousness. Now, by alternating transcendental consciousness with normal natural activity of daily life for a householder and the mental activity of discrimination in the life of a recluse, the transcendental consciousness becomes permanent and gains the status of cosmic consciousness. Again, going from cosmic consciousness to God consciousness, this progress happens because of the most highly refined type of activity, which is the activity of devotion. So now we understand how the process of purification is carried on to its ultimate conclusion through the performance of action in all states of consciousness. And finally, in this verse, Bhagavan is bringing out a technique for the performance of action in the state of cosmic consciousness, for it says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis perform action. And further refined work of devotion transforms cosmic consciousness into God consciousness. Now let me read this verse again so that everything comes together. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis, abandoning attachment, perform action for self-purification. So here Bhagavan is saying that in addition to samadhi, there has to be some activity alternating in every state of consciousness. It's just the activity varies. For the householder, it is the physical activity. For the recluse, it is the mental activity. When in the from cosmic to God consciousness, it is the most refined activity of devotion. But there is activity, and this is important to bring the culmination of the purification. Here ends the essence of the verse number 11, Chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the Yoga of Action and Renunciation of Action. Translation and commentary by Maharishi. Now I will add a few words for the seeker. The life of a sannyasi is like a lotus leaf floating on the surface of a pond. This lotus leaf is born, lives and dies in the pond. Here the lotus leaf, although it is in the water and exists both in and out of water, it never really gets wet. Though in contact with the water, the surface detaches itself from the water and it does not get wet. Furthermore, it always remains exposed to the sun above and remains detached from the water below. So this is the perfect example of a sannyasi's life, and this is a good example for a seeker to emulate. One becomes self-referral and becomes naturally detached, and there is naturally renunciation and remains in eternal freedom. It is also very important for a seeker to continue with this practice and gain the natural detachment from the material objects. The material objects and the material desires are so many, in fact, they are endless. In the endless pursuit for the material objects, sensory objects, then one acquires more and more desires, more and more impressions which create the vasanas and the samskaras, and also creating more impurities for the nervous system, including the mind and intellect. If one does not rise above these material desires, then one develops more indifference towards self-purification. So here, it is very important for every seeker to understand their priority is to gain this self-purification by continuing to rise in consciousness and naturally developing the detachment and the renunciation. This has been my personal experience. Once the cosmic consciousness has been gained, there was no struggle at all in further purification and gaining the oneness with the divine. When the individual personal desires end and one performs action as per the will of God, then naturally one remains in freedom. One has become Jivan Mukta. So let me end here for today and we'll continue tomorrow. Jai Gurudev, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.
ज्ञानाञ्जन